aligned with the UN SDGs and how their business development plans can actually be boosted by implementing the various indicators and goals that are outlined within that framework. And I do a lot of things in that. I manage an investment fund, I manage accelerator programs, I get assignments to work at different accelerators around the world. I just came back from my India assignment in Hyderabad, which was the largest incubator in India and the second largest in the world, and where I developed a 9-month program for startups. But that's usually what my job description sounds like. But I do work in a lot of industries. I do work with a lot of different organizations. My assignments can range from either UN affiliated organizations, private companies, NGOs. I have worked at 5 different accelerators in the past 2 years, and a lot more other organizations, committees, and such. I usually do a lot of traveling. I came to Korea just a few days ago, and I'm leaving Korea in 2 days, where I'll be traveling to LA, Boston, New York, Vienna, Oslo, Berlin, back to Berlin. And I also go to the Arctic for some reason. But just so I can give you a short life story of how I came to be here. I was born and raised in Korea. I had a very eccentric education style. I took a gap year after middle school just to study for SNU. I felt like that wasn't really my thing. Went to high school. I went to a very rural high school called Minsagon, which some of you may or may not know. And then I graduated, and I was accepted to Cambridge, but I decided to go to Minerva School, which is another very new institution, which was founded in 2014. I'm the second graduating class, so it's again very new and another new adventure, and I travel around the world for that. And that basically allows me to interact with a lot of new perspectives, a lot of new organizations and people. And this is where I truly realize the potential that everyone here has, is that the same understanding and the actionable skills that people have. Again, a lot of people from Latin America or any other developing country, so to speak, although there are a lot of developed countries in Latin America, don't have the actionable skills, or their countries are not really recognized, or even when they want to implement something, when they want to research something and they actually want to connect to people, they realize their national infrastructure is not suitable for that. And at the same time, a lot of people in Europe and the United States or Canada, while they have all the infrastructures ready and for go, they don't actually realize the problem. Their resources are usually utilized in ways that are not really targeted towards their main customers or the main beneficiaries of those actions. And whenever I see initiative in Korea happen, especially among the youth population, where they're more connected, the millennial, post-millennial generation, I do feel that people here can truly understand what is happening around the world, especially in close proximity to a lot of developing countries, to Korea. And while Korea is a highly developed country, it still struggles with a lot of geopolitical issues that the northern neighbor, geopolitical issues that a lot of developing countries still are struggling with. So you have the capacity to understand, at the same time the infrastructure allows you to act on them. You know people, whenever you connect to people, especially through this program, you'll be connected to a lot of people who have actions, and they will listen to you because you're from Korea and then you have gotten a certain degree of education, and you'll find it a lot easier than your counterparts in other parts of the world to make action. You can recommend policies, your policies will be listened to should you research them thoroughly enough. And whenever you make programs, when you propose projects, you will again be listened to, and you will find that there are a lot more people who will be willing to subscribe to your projects than again your counterparts in other parts of the world. This is just from my basic experience from a few years of my short life, where I have lived in various places around the world. I will not begin to list them. But just in those circumstances, you have the skills to do that. And I think you can be confident in that. What I do find whenever I find Korean students go abroad is that they don't fully realize or recognize their potential to act on it, and they typically spend their time among themselves or just in a more like a silo echo chamber where you listen to each other's opinion but not really reach out to other people, because it seems so natural. You don't realize how significant of an advantage you have. And just to do so, I've sat in multiple UN committees. I've sat in more conferences than I can list, and just the plane of acceptance for you guys is greater. So please, when you go to this journey, make sure to connect with as many people you can and talk with as many people you can. Listen to them, document them. You will find that if you truly listen to them with that perspective that they're not just someone else, they, and on the perspective of like, wow, we have more commonalities and contributions that we can share than any other countries that you might that they might interact with in their stay in New York, then that gives you a different perspective on what you can and what your responsibilities are at that place. So apart from that, I do believe you have a very busy schedule. Again, I recommend you to keep notes. I always keep a diary with me just to make sure that I take notes. Phones, laptops are useful, but then they're not really the best, especially when you seem distracted. I can give you a lot of tips like that. Just be ready, be smiling, make sure that you're a representative of not just Korea, but again, the youth around the world. They rely on you to make these policies. What else? What else can I say?
Just maybe some tips.
Should I give them more concrete examples?
Some different ways you could make yourself known to a room, perhaps,
Right.
and also how some good ways for you to approach and begin a meaningful conversation with somebody of pressure.
Right, okay. So I will say this from my background of representing different organizations like UN committees. Usually this happens at Vienna, but then I also go sometimes to New York or DC to do policy work, which is another thing I do. So one thing I recommend you to do is active listening. It's actually a technique, and also Google this up. Active listening is when you are not a passive listener, but when you're listening and engaging with the speaker. And this is how you usually get to, and how I usually get to know people within committees and conferences, because usually a speaker is surrounded by 3 to 4 people, and he or she or they may not realize a particular person that they're talking to, or they might be talking to a particular person because that person initiated a conversation, but the conversation might stray away, or the conversation keeps on going on a topic, and that person will typically look at the person who is staring at them most intently, and that can be used as an advantage when you look at a person, engage with them, when you actually respond to what they're saying using various body language techniques, then they will attune towards you. They will know which topic that you like and you've been interested in, and they will talk more lengthily about that. And when you have established, usually within 1 to 2 minutes of conversation, that you are the main listener to that person, you can actually ask questions and start steering the topic towards what you're interested in. And when the topic is of your interest or a policy that you have recommended for, then you can naturally ask questions about, I've been doing this policy, I've been doing that research, or wasn't the policy you mentioned something, you can elaborate on the speaker and make sure the conversation can come back towards you, and ensure that you can contribute to the conversation in a proactive way, that he or she or they realize that you are experienced and you have certain background that they would also like to listen to you, and that usually gets them to ask questions about yourselves, and that allows you to have opportunities to give your elevator pitches, or after the talk ends, he or she or they typically comes to me and okay, you had a lot of background, what do you actually work on, this is my card, I'm interested to hear more about you. That usually comes after active engagement, active listening, and that just gives you a lot more opportunities to talk about it, and even when you don't realize that someone may be of your interest, because there's only so much that Google can do for your favor. You can research certain speakers, but there will be people who are not represented in LinkedIn or Google yet, but who still wield a lot of soft power and who can pull some strings that you'll be connected to, and the only way you can be connected to them is by active engagement, to make sure that you are a person that is worth their time, is worth their attention. So that's one thing that I highly encourage you to do. And again, note-taking is very significant. I just always take a note around with me, write things down, and it just allows the speaker to feel that you are engaged, that you are listening. And even details, just where you were, what time was this, or what committee that you just came out of. Details like that allows access triggers. So when I always write follow-up emails within 24 to 48 hours of the conversation just to ensure that I don't lose track of them, just say hi. And those notes come in real handy. As in, it's like, hey, thank you for talking with me at Madison Square Garden yesterday afternoon. It was a delightful talk with you, and that triggers their memory as well to ensure that they remember you, as well as being sure that you are someone that they're close to, rather than one of 200 people that the person might have met that day. So that's another tip that I can also provide you with. Attire, I live in a republic where it's the fashion headquarters of the world, so I don't think I need to comment on that. But just behavior-wise, be confident, exude confidence, at the same time humility. That's a very fine line to walk. But acting as a person that you know the topic of because you've researched them, or even when you don't know the topic enough, listening intently allows you to catch on to phrases that you might recognize. And again, by active listening, you can steer the conversation towards topics that you're more comfortable with. And again, these are people who work in the field, they have worked 10 to 20 years of experience more than you have. And it's like when you're talking to someone who has 10, 20 years of experience, they're a pretty large target. Their experience spans so much that whatever your expertise, whatever your concerns, whatever your interests are, it will be within their bandwidth to expand on them. So if you can steer that, then it's easier for you. They are a wider target than you think, and take advantage of that. For example, I can be talking to Mr. Lim, and he has experience in accelerator, startup, policy, development, gender equality, anything. And even if he starts with startups, I can easily steer it towards, if my interest is gender equality, towards gender equality by just placing few bridges and active listening. And that allows him to be interested in you, build a connection, and he will probably recommend few people to you. Sometimes you will find that some people are not really willing to provide you with connections or just not immediately engage with you, which is fine. I still try to have at least one point of connection. They might be out of business cards, just like get their email in a polite enough manner, or just making sure like where they're sitting. This usually happens to me in committees, because committees and people usually sit at the same place. It's like going to a different person from the same organization, which I can identify either by their seat, their badge, or their label pins. And it's like, hey, I was talking with this guy from your organization and I was really interested in him. And just like going through referrals, one bridge over for a person that you want to connect to and you want to like engage in more conversations with, also help. As in, like, if you have a set goal, as in like what topic you want to talk about, what person you want to talk to, there are multiple ways to do that. Just latch onto them and make sure that you maximize your opportunities to engage with someone. Stay in conferences, go out. You can make small talk, especially when you're just like getting food. Like, you'll be surprised at how much conversation you can have while you're getting food at a buffet, just like talking, saying like, you will find that yourself will be awkward when you're getting food. That guy, you're just waiting for that guy to finish filling his plate so that you can get their plate. Both of you are awkward. And when you're just like awkward and when you're waiting for him to finish or waiting for him to just like start talking to you, he's probably thinking the same thing. So just be the first one to engage, the first one to actually start the conversation. This is one thing about Koreans. Koreans typically wait, but at the same time, Koreans are masters at reading body language. I have not found anyone else in the world who reads body languages better than Koreans because 눈치 is a thing. So you know if someone is up for a conversation, you know when someone is feeling, oh god, I had the worst conference of my life kind of face, or to like, I think I had a delightful conversation, or like, I would really like that chocolate over there. You can just latch onto it, you can read their body language, just comment on it, be friendly, and if they don't have someone to talk to, or if they're just like roaming around, just like going to a place, they would gravitate towards you. And it's like, oh, yeah, they will just like talk to you when they're going back to your table or going back to their team of friends they might introduce you to. All these soft skills, soft strings you can pull just by interacting with them is immense, and that please do. And again, like follow up and conversations in due time, usually 24 to 48 hours I find are good enough timeline to just like get to someone so that even when they don't reply, they usually won't reply until like a week later, but just the fact that you say, we met here at when, and we were talking about this, just gives them enough triggers to memorize you, and then it just unconsciously make them more comfortable writing a reply back to you when they also have 60 other emails to reply back to. Though that's another thing. And again, should you find me in any of your journeys in the future, should you visit any of the cities that I'll be going to, which will be LA, Boston, New York, Vienna. I won't be in New York by the time you're there. By the time you're there, I'll be in my company headquarters back in Oslo, and I'll be in the Arctic because there's a conference happening there. They invited 100 world leaders to go on an icebreaker ship to go over to the Arctic and talk about how to make the world a better place. And they invited me, gave me a full scholarship and everything to go to the Arctic, see the polar bear, see the aurora borealis, which is pretty cool. Which is something you get when you're connected with the right people at the right time, at the right place. And the best way to ensure that will happen is to connect to as many people as possible in a very meaningful, qualitative way, not just quantitative ways. And then don't compare how many business cards you guys accumulated with each other, but just compare how many email replies you've gotten back from each people. That's, I think, a better estimator of how well your time was spent in New York. I think that was about good enough spiel for me. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them on. That was a lot. Sorry. I just like rambled on. Anything else?
I just have a question. Like, what are the most valuable experiences that you had? Because you since you had like so many experiences, like, what do you think was the most valuable to make you like, as like in right now you?
This is a very cheesy answer, but failures, literally, just like trying out so many different tactics. I've talked to people out of bathrooms. I've talked to people when they're like eating cheese. I've engage with people in the most ridiculous way possible, literally just grabbing people as they're leaving the conference, or just like, wow, your badge has a very interesting color. Like, literally, I've tried out everything to engage a person. When I'm interested in someone, I will make sure that I talk with that person, and I will make sure that that person is interested in me as well, in all the right ways. So failures, I think, and just like trying out a lot of different techniques. I pretty sure you don't get this, but I'm a very introverted person. My Myers-Briggs is an INTJ, so I'm highly introverted, but just developing the skill of networking, socializing, being confident, realizing that non-Koreans don't really express themselves as much, as in like when you're talking to Korean, they modulate their facial expressions both subconsciously and unconsciously. When you're talking with non-Koreans, it's typically happens that when they're bored, you sort of know it. And just reading that and not losing hope, because what I realized is they're actually more interested than they look like. As in, we're very attuned to people being polite and listening to us attentively, even when they don't. Reverse is usually the true. It's like, I would find people who just like stone-faced for the entire conversation, and those will be the people who will follow up with me. And that just allows me a lot of confidence. Like, wow, I feel like just like go hiding in a mouse hole right now, but I'm gonna have confidence that this person is actually interested in me. And that belief and talking to them as if they're interested, I think sort of psychologically triggers them to think, am I interested in this guy talking to me about this? And that kind of expression. So those experiences, just having confidence and trying things out, I think was most valuable to me, just knowing what kind of person to talk to. Anything else? you can ask me which countries I was in, or what I did, or I don't know, anything else.
When did it come to you that you wanted to do this kind of work, like this sort of work, this area?
So this started in San Francisco. So I actually like got into Cambridge as an engineer, as a mechanical engineer, engineering major, more into aerospace engineering, and then I changed my track radically into Minerva, going into a school that doesn't even have graduates yet. And we started off in San Francisco, and I loved it there. I began, most of my friends began working in startups. I realized I don't like working in startups. I like working in more meta level, market size things. And I worked at 500 startups and GSV labs for some terms, just doing data analytics and program development. And that's when I realized that Silicon Valley is very, very biased. There's a lot of companies that get funding where I don't really see a value of their funding. A lot of companies get funding because they sound cool and investors want to invest in cool companies, and they just want to say, I invested in this cool company, which actually provides zero value, but I can still talk about it. And that's when I realized that I wanted to work in the social impact area, when I wanted to make sustainable change, when I wanted to ensure that there are policies out there, that there are programs out there that ensures that companies and enterprises make social impact, that have social impact as one of their guidelines. Right now, you only have profitability as a main metric, but the world is radically changing. Only in the last 2 years I have seen so many impact investment firms, zebra companies, and social enterprises come up. And all these companies and people are realizing that profitability is not the prime reason of the world. And that got me engaged with policy, because when you're doing business development for social engagement, you have to connect to policy, because it is also primarily where the money comes from and where the infrastructure is being developed at. So San Francisco, just looking at the other side of the spectrum, the most uniquely, radically, insanely developed part of the spectrum, and at the same time, just being able to go to places and meeting up with people that come from the other end of the spectrum made me realize that I want to be there to bridge that gap. And I realized I have that capacity to bridge that gap. I understand. When you're an American and when you go to anyone from a developing country and you say, I understand you, they probably won't believe you. But when you say you're a Korean and then your country just came out of a civil war, just like half a century ago, they believe you, they will talk to you, they will be more interested in you. And that's what I learned. So that's when I realized I want to be doing this thing on the particular advantage point I had.
What do you think the Korean youth or young adults should do, or what do you think our role is in the
international environment? Again, a bridge maker, understanding. Koreans have a very wide latitude of acceptance. That's actually another term, latitude of acceptance. You can also Google that, which is a psychology term, as in different people have different latitude acceptances on what they're comfortable with. And Korea comes from a culture that is, on some point, very conservative. We are a very Confucius, conservative-based culture, but at the same time, we're also very Christian-based, and like Western-based, because of all the Christian missionaries. And there are certain like Western values. I say Christian because Western values are also like developed from like Christian and Catholic values, so that's where their subconsciousness is developed in. So you have Western perspectives. At the same time, a lot of Koreans are also very progressive. You have one of the most progressive feminist, gender diversity rights, and other progressive and liberal institutions and people in Korea. And that is impossible to see anywhere else. I mean, look at the United States, it's not happening. I just came back from India. I was living there for about 5 months, and that level of diversity does not exist harmoniously. And for some reason in Korea it does, and you accept it. You can understand both very strict, gender-driven, Changnam, like boy-first parents. At the same time, being a feminist and being a social inclusion center, and it still goes on harmoniously. You don't have to split your identity to act on either of them. And that's an advantage that I never see anywhere else, truly. And I think that's why Korean youth and Korean people should go out in the world, be that bridge, do policy work, develop companies, develop programs that allow both sides to come to talk. That's what I primarily do. I connect developing countries and developed countries to create programs. I host a lot of events. I host a lot of meetups and conferences myself because people trust me to know them, to understand them, to hang around with them in both sides of the spectrum. And I think that's what you should be doing and a lot of other people should be doing.
And then
How are we at time?
Probably.
If your time is okay.
Oh.
Okay.
And I maybe like suspect that you might have get a lot of emails as well, like as you like go around and meet a lot of people.
Right.
So how do you personally manage all the emails or the
Right. Personally, I have 4 different email addresses because I work in 3 different organizations and one is my personal email. I get around 10 to 20 emails per inbox that I reply to. There's a lot of tools out there. For one thing, I do a lot of Skype meetings. I do pro bono consulting work and advisory work. I'm on board of advisor for quite a few startups just because of that work, and I manage that because I have a doodle link. Not the doodle where you just schedule events, but there you can also have personal meet me doodle pages which syncs to your calendar, which syncs to your Google Calendar and just shows your availability for whatever time zones and whatever event you have in your calendar. It's slotted out, and that's how I usually schedule meetings. As in, I can just show it to you right now. Like, that's what my calendar looks like for this week. That was the week before that. I usually have a lot of meetings to coordinate, and meetings, emails, I just have particular heuristics, and after some point in time, you have default phrases that you know you can say. It's like, oh, you're in this sector, I'm gonna tell you this, 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 and I just realized that sometimes it's worth my time to send them an email, to send back an email. Other times I realize it's much better some time if I just Skype them and say like, hey, I really like this conversation, I would like to have an in-person meeting with you, here's my doodle link, can we make a call? And they make a call, and then like a 30-minute conversation usually covers 6 to 7 email conversations, and it actually develops like relationships more, and just signature wise, I'm not sure if WFUNA give them email signatures. Do you? Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. Just like at the bottom of your email, it says like company, position, and contact information. I make sure that is streamlined so that if people are interested in me, they can literally just like click on my LinkedIn, see what I'm up to. Yeah. So I manage email time by. I think this is just from experience. Just from experience. Knowing what category, what type of people that I talk to, and also it also comes from me emailing them. When I'm emailing them, I ask them for something specific, so I know that when they email me back, there'll be something specific. The worst emails to reply to, that takes me the most time to reply to, are vague emails that I don't really know how to reply. So when I send emails, I ask for specifics, so that when I get emails back, I also don't need to spend too much time replying back to them, and that's good for both sides, I think.